Yeah, g'day everybody. Wade Northhausen here for Billboard Battalion. Coming to you from battalion headquarters in Coyuga, North Central Victoria, Australia. And tonight we're getting close to the end of the race that's coming up to the federal election on the 3rd of May. And we've really had some terrific people on. We've done some interviews with some great candidates and some other people who are involved in the political sector. And as people know, one of my main things is the ag sector, the agricultural sector, our farmers, food production, and the security of our country. So tonight, which is Monday, the 28th of April, 2025, must say I'm really, really glad to have on tonight Gerard Rennick, who is now the leader of the People First Party. Gerard formed the party there a while ago. He also have Madison King, who is one of Gerard's candidates over in Western Australia. We were also going to have tonight Jody Clune on, who is another one of Gerard's People First candidates in WA. However, as people are very, very busy at the minute, flying around at 100 miles an hour on the campaign trail and so on, Jody isn't going to be able to be with us tonight. So just like to say thanks for accepting the invitation, Jody, and we understand, mate. Well done to you. She's a hard old slog out there, mate, so just keep up the fantastic work. So I'd just like to say good day to Gerard Rennick here, who's on screen now, and just throw it over to you, Gerard, and you might just tell us just briefly how you got to possibly not. Okay. Yep, Gerard's still with us.
Yeah, so sorry there, Wade. Yeah, the phone just called in there. Sorry. Yeah.
No, we look. This Gerard is the thing with modern technology, mate. People who do as many Zooms and things like this as what we do, it's always a challenge. Nothing is ever just perfect. And well done for getting on with us tonight. We've had some pretty serious issues trying to do Zooms and meetings and interviews and God knows what from out in the outback areas and remote areas. So, all right, mate. So we might just start quickly, if we can, with you and how you got the People First Party up and going, because I love the whole thing and I think it's fantastic, and I know you're taking them on. So just a little bit of that, if you wouldn't mind, Gerard.
Yeah, no, thanks, Wade. Well, look, it's sort of been quite a whirlwind, 6 months. Effectively, I lost my pre-selection in the Liberal Party 2 years ago because, I took a stand on the vaccine mandates and injuries, despite claiming to believe in free speech and freedom of choice and the dignity and worth of every individual. The Liberal Party ultimately chose to put loyalty to the party in front of loyalty to the people. And the people that wanted to get rid of me used that to get rid of me, which they did. They actually cheated, as it turns out, and even when they got busted, and even when Peter Dutton asked them to go back and do it again properly, they refused to do it. Took it to a judge who 15 years earlier said that political parties have to abide by their constitutions. Well, he did 15 years later. He overruled his own decision and said they don't have to abide by their constitutions. That way, that's how they got away with, cheating in a pre-selection to get rid of me. And I was like, well, that's it. I'm done. I struggled to stay in the party, even when they, throughout the Morrison era, when they basically, did what they did to the injured and just, basically didn't uphold the values that they claim to believe in. But when they just sort of got caught cheating and wouldn't fess up, and I was like, righto, that's it, I'm off. So I wanted to spend the rest of the time I had in this term talking about the policies. I'm a finance person by trade. I did grow up on a farm in a small town of about 4,000 people, but I sort of came to politics with a view of getting involved, in reforming the tax system and the monetary system. And as people, one of my favourite sayings is freedom is a child of affluence. And ultimately, I'm a big believer if people have, a good job, a roof over their head, food on the table, we can solve a lot of the problems. We can't solve all problems. No one's perfect. but we can go a long way to making the world a better place. And our current tax system and monetary system work against us, just like our energy system works against us. Yeah, people very easily understand the fact that we've closed down our locally sourced energy in the form of coal, gas, and nuclear. Well, not yet. Well, we have closed down nuclear. We never opened it, and we're basically importing foreign-made renewables that are 70% owned by foreigners. So that type of mentality has also been going on for years with our tax system and with our monetary system. And they're the two issues that I really wanted to highlight in the last 8 months, along with a couple of other things like an independent judicial commission. We need to have greater whistleblower protections. We need to bring back cross-media ownership laws because, the censorship out there on social media is out of control. And then the propaganda, which is driven by the three main media outlets, the ABC, News Corp and Fairfax 9, it's very hard to, cut through that propaganda given their saturation in the mainstream. So there is some, social issues I wanted to deal with as well. Obviously, we've been talking about, throughout my term, along with tax and monetary policy, I've been fighting for, those people injured by the vaccine and those people have lost their jobs through the mandates, as well as the whole climate change palaver. Yes, climate does change. Of course it does. It's tautology. It's like saying, is the water wet? Well, of course, water's wet. The climate changes. But it's the environment that we need to be focused on and protecting our biodiversity rather than climate change itself. So, so they're all the issues I wanted to fight for. I needed to be in a party to get above the line on the Senate ticket. So I started the party with a view to getting my name above the line. And I guess in the last 6 months, it's been a whirlwind journey, and it's sort of accumulating this week with the election. But in that time, I've had some incredible candidates put their hands up to run with me, with me, for me, alongside me. And I think we've got a movement here. I hope it's not a false dawn and we crash and burn on Saturday night with only 1 or 2%. I'd like to think we can get closer to 4 to 5%. And if we did that given that we're a party that's only been around for 6 months, that would be an achievement and would indicate that there is a movement here that's worth pursuing. So I guess that's where we're at the moment. So we're working incredibly hard to try and get that brand out there with a view to also building again in 2028.
Well, wow, what a situation and a story. What a great couple of minutes to spit all that out, because that's what it's about. As far as I'm concerned, all that stuff is what it's about. The four major parties, and I'm glad that you're out of the other ones there, and you've kicked off your own one, because the four major parties are in the business of selling out Australia.
They are.
How do you rate the four major parties at the minute as being true and honest and good representatives of the Australian people?
Well, look, I actually believe most of them believe, they mean well. The problem is, that while they mean well, they lack the courage of their convictions and they lack confidence in their own intelligence. So, as we saw throughout COVID, the Liberal Party just packed up and went home. They didn't even try and stand up for the individual. They just totally drank the Kool-Aid of the COVID fear narrative. And look, don't get me wrong, viruses exist, or, people get sick. Older people are vulnerable. Sick people are vulnerable to pathogens, whatever you want to call them out there. And, the government has an obligation to try and protect the weak and the vulnerable and the sick by all means. But you don't destroy the strong to protect the weak. And the Liberal Party, I thought, was a party that stood up for the rights of the individual. And, given that, and yet again, I've said this many times, I get why initially, we had to be, had to err on the side of caution. People didn't know what this COVID virus, let's call it the COVID virus, was on about. But when it became apparent in the second year that it wasn't as bad as what they were making it out to be, i.e. the average age of death from COVID was 84, these people had comorbidities, they should have said, righto, we don't need to be locking up young people working or people of working age population who are fit and healthy. There's no, they might get knocked up and, it might knock them around a bit, but ultimately you were never going to stop the transmission of an airborne virus. So we saw the Liberals cave on that. We've seen the Liberals cave on it. They just voted again before we shut down Parliament. They just voted against a tax cut for people on the low income bracket from 16 cents to 14 cents in the dollar. For people earning between $18,200 and $45,000. I mean, this is the party that says they believe in tax cuts, and then they didn't back it in. I mean, I just can't believe it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I mean, I'm criticising the Liberal Party because this is the party I came from, and I expect more from them. I have never expected much from Labor or the Greens. So you can take it for granted. I don't think much of them at all. But so you've got the fact that and even the traditional Labor Party, I'll give them a kick in the guts as well. They were originally a working class party. They had become the party of the elites, of the academics, of the managerial class, the bureaucrats, the superannuation funds, and the childcare owners who own all these childcare centres. They aren't, and of course, things like United Voice, fastest growing union in Australia because the childcare workers have to join that union. So they're really not pushing the interests of the working class Australians either, right? So neither of the major parties are following up with their convictions. And then the other thing is, then we got the lack of lack of confidence in their own intelligence. None of them know how to fix the problem. None of them actually know how we've got ourselves into this situation. I mean, I'm the only politician I know that talks about what happened in the 80s with the John Button plan, where they basically said, we're not going to compete in manufacturing, let's go offshore. Paul Keating did to finance markets what Kevin Rudd did in 2008 to immigration, where they basically lifted immigration controls or relaxed them to such an extent that Australia was flooded with foreign debt in the late 80s, leading to the 87 stock market crash and all the scases and the bonds and the palaver that went there, the collapse of the Victorian State Bank, and then the rise in debt, private household debt from about $8 billion in 85 up to $800 billion by 2008. That just saw a massive rise in house prices from 4 times earnings to 10 to 12 times earnings, that saw two parents go back to work, that saw the creation of the childcare industry, crash in 2008, resulted in, from the GFC, meant that many retirees were going to lose their houses. So they allowed foreign students to buy houses, which then saw a rise in foreign students, which then led to immigration. So I understand how we got into this situation, and I understand how to fix the problems. Namely, we have to increase the withholding tax rate on profits sent offshore. We have to tax interest paid on all that foreign debt offshore. And then we have to stop using, if anyone understands a balance sheet, your listeners understand a balance sheet, you've got an asset on the right-hand side, the left-hand side. That is controlled. The right-hand side, what you call capital, debt or equity, tells you who controls the asset. We've allowed foreign debtors or foreign banks to come in and buy up our infrastructure. We've sold our infrastructure. We've allowed foreign banks to lend to housing. And as a result now, everything we pay, so much of our disposable income goes offshore to pay to use foreign debt when we should have used our own domestic equity. So, anyway, I'll leave it at that.
So
I could go on for ages, but yeah.
There's a fair bit of that, Gerard, and it's really great to see somebody who just shoots straights, mate. That's what I think is so resonates with not only yourself but a lot of the people who now are in the smaller parties and so on. And that's what we do at Billboard Battalion, mate. We shoot straight. We travel around Australia, and we tell it as it is. And some people don't like that, but that's very much a them problem, because the facts and the evidence are, it is what it is. So my primary history is in agricultural politics, and so I might say good day to Maddie, and it's interesting to see everybody has a little bit of background and a little bit of history as to why they get into politics, and I think it's great to see, young people kicking in and having a bit of a go, So just a big welcome to you, Madison, to say good day. And so, whereabouts have you come from in terms of getting into this with Gerard?
Everyone, first, I'm in a small town, so the reception here is not the best, and I'm a guest at someone else's house. So bear with me if the internet drops out. So I got into politics after watching my family in the cattle industry and friends in the industry throughout the whole state, from the Kimberleys all the way down to the southwest, but also it also affects Northern Territory. So it started to get me into politics in that regards. I could see what was happening. Now, I came from a town called Wyndham, as well as a community called Umbulgari, so Forest River Mission. Now, when I was growing up, the cattle industry in that particular area was huge. It was massive. So my grandfather, Noel Buntine, we owned Road Trains Australia and Buntines Australia. So the trucking industry was basically one of the most important factors in the transport industry and the cattle industry. And when that came to an end in 1985, the government made a lot of promises in fixing that problem, but they never did. So we had people kind of lingering around for about 5 to 7 years, waiting for the meatworks to reopen, and watching people put their lives on hold, waiting for the government to fix the problem and find a solution, never came through. And you go on to look at Wyndham in 2025, it gone from a thriving, bustling little town, which was back in the day 2,000 to 3,000, which was a lot for a small rural country town that had a port, to now maybe 600 people. It's just dead. The employment is non-existent. The structure, you may as well just put the town itself, because everything is still 1985. And then the trucking industry is just basically collapsed in that particular area. So for me, watching this over the time made me think about, okay, we are spending a lot of money in cities and we're not feeding that money back into rural towns, communities that could be thriving and bustling. Then at the same time, I come from a family that's connected to Ernie Bridge. So when he came up with the plan of piping the waters down from the Kimberley down to Perth, I thought, wow, he was very innovative for the time. And when you look at the resources that would have been perfect for the West Australian agricultural business and small towns, to have a lot of people shut it down because they didn't have a vision. They didn't have the knowledge to actually make something is appalling, and it still is appalling. But the concept is still there to grow these towns, grow these communities, keep the cattle industry going, as well as the sheep industry here in the southwest. So what really got me into politics, so that was always in the background of my, really hit it off for me was the no vote campaign. So I was a huge no voter because I could see how that would really destroy the last bit of voice that we have left on a grassroots level. Absolutely. So I thought, we need to do something, and we cannot have the same people speaking on our behalf. So that's when I really jumped in with both feet, and I used my voice as loud as I could. And I went against the grain throughout the Kimberley region. And I have no, regrets of doing that. I'm unapologetic for anything that I say. I'm quite well researched, and I like to think that I could back it up with the research that I've done. Not only have I lived in that era of the cattle industry coming to an end in Wyndham itself, but I can also see now in the southwest how the sheep industry is also coming to an end. Now, it took me 3 weeks of full research to see how we could save the sheep industry. But my question is, where the hell were the MPs that were supposed to be representing those rural communities and those towns in the southwest of Western Australia? They were just getting a paycheck. Now, if I did a full research of both the legal side, the resource side, and how we could fix that issue, why didn't they do it in 4 years?
Well, look, and I think I reckon you've got a terrific representative for your party there, to tell you the truth, Gerard.
I do, yeah.
Absolutely. as I said, agricultural politics has been my thing. I come from North Central Victoria here in the Goulburn Valley, which has been the heartland of the dairy industry, the irrigation centre here. And, what we've seen, and I'll put it to Maddie, that what we're seeing with all these politicians who are supposed to represent you in the southwest, and we did a tour through Western Australia this time last year. And, we're supposed to go back across there because there's so many people in WA want us to go and present. Yep. Particularly, we've even had invitations just recently to go up to the Kimberley and to present up there around the beef industry. Yep. We've got invitations to go up to northern Queensland where the cattle industry up there is big. So there's a lot of stuff going on that's attacking farmers, our agricultural sector. And so for Maddie's benefit, I've been doing this for 40 years, and this is not an accident. What we're seeing is specific policies that are coming out of organisations like the World Economic Forum, the United Nations and the WHO that are specifically winding up our agricultural sector. And, you talked about the politicians who get paid and don't represent their states, don't represent their constituents. So in 2011, we saw the suspension of the live beef exports out of WA and the top end. That destroyed huge amounts of the industry. And we're seeing now the sheep export banning in WA out of Bunbury there and others. So, this is not a drill. This is not a joke. It's not an accident. The policies that were brought in to destroy the Murray-Darling Basin region of our family farmers, food production and security, this stuff's all happening. Is very serious. So, Gerard, you mentioned about Australian infrastructure staying in Australian hands and so on. I put it to you that what we're seeing are specific strategies, and what we've seen with the Murray-Darling Basin plan and with also the collapse of the cattle industry, we've seen Australian family farmers who have been deliberately sent broke as so as their land and water resources becomes available to multinational corporate investors. So, it might be something you might have a comment about that.
Oh, look, absolutely. And this is what I'm talking about, capital controls. And the other thing that we need to bring into this conversation is the ability to collectively bargain, for small business to collectively bargain with bigger business. Now, we've got a policy, people first. We're going to allow farmers to collectively bargain. So at the moment, if you've got a turnover of $10 million or less or more, you can't collectively bargain. Now, $10 million in terms of turnover isn't necessarily a lot if you're only pulling out a 2% margin. So we want to allow, especially when you're bargaining with Coles and Woolworths. So we want to enable the formation of cooperatives again. Without making it too onerous for the farmers or whatever small business. So I hear you. And the other thing we want to do in regards to the regions is that we need to actually look at these so-called environmental flows down the Murray River, where I'm led to believe that they're actually causing overflooding and the Murray gums, etc., are getting foot rot. And then that water runs down to the lower lakes in South Australia and sits there and evaporates. It is complete and utter madness to be letting all that water run out to sea. We basically built the Snowy Hydro project to stop water from running out to sea on the eastern seaboard, so that farmers could irrigate in the Murray Basin there, Murray-Darling Basin there. And now we're actually all we're doing is diverting the water and letting it run out or run into the lakes in the lower lakes of South Australia, which to me just seems crazy, given that it evaporates within 12 months. So there's some policies we do want to do with the farmers, but we want to increase their right to collectively bargain. We're banning foreign ownership of agricultural land on a prospective basis. So there's some of the policies that we're up against, that we intend to put forward, because we are concerned. I know I'm certainly concerned about corporates buying farmland, because if that's the case, they will, the individuals will never be able to compete, or small family businesses will never be able to compete with the money that corporates can buy for farmland. Another thing we'll do too is ban foreign ownership of water rights and make sure that to the extent that foreigners do make a capital gains on water rights, they have to pay tax. But we should ban that as well, because it's just unreal that when Howard detached water rights from the property and then allowed foreigners to buy the water rights. That's not good either.
Absolutely. I mean, Howard was all about open free trade and all the rest of this garbage, deregulating the dairy industry, and the unbundling of the water from properties was the death knell for family farmers. It was as simple as that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
And in terms of the water that's going down the Murray, because they've bought so much water, the destruction, the environmental destruction to the Murray River is catastrophic. They lied to people, blatantly fraudulently lied about repairing the Murray River. The lower lakes in South Australia and the Coorong, the South Australian government has destroyed the Coorong and the lower lakes in SA, not the farmers who use water out of the system. And, we see another thing of this attack where they created a fight between northern basin irrigators and southern basin irrigators. But the big problem is that whatever water we get in the dams, they are just falling over themselves to run it down the river out into the Southern Ocean. So our critical, fresh water that is so important for growing food and for keeping our country safe, they're running it out into the sea as fast as they possibly can under the fraud and the lies of protecting the environment, when it's totally, absolutely not.
Yeah. And you would know more about this than me, being from that area. But I've been told now you get sort of flooding down the Murray 7 or 8 out of every 10 years, whereas once upon a time you might have got it 1 to 2 years out of 10. Is that correct?
So yes, they run flooding events out of character, based on politics, not nature. And we had a lot of big arguments at the time with these so-called environmental scientists who said they're going to run water down the river at X time. And I said, well, when you get rain events, that puts water down the river. And they said, oh, yes, but that's at the wrong time. So what we've got is these lying, fraudulent environmental scientists are telling nature now that she's got it wrong. This is how sick this is. And all it's doing is destroying our farmers and our communities throughout the Murray-Darling Basin. Australia's food production capacity is in jeopardy because we import a huge amount of food now. You've got all these people who say, oh, we produce so much food, we'll never be able to eat it. No, they don't understand the massive amounts of food that we import. We're getting into a very dangerous situation here where if something goes wrong, we're going to have people starving. It's as simple as that. I just wanted to touch on a few other things. When we had Billboard Battalion did a protest in Canberra late last year against the Mad Bill, and you were gracious enough to come out and speak on stage with us, along with a number of other politicians. That Mad Bill, the misinformation and disinformation bill, where we're told in many movements that we have to go a lot easier. We can't be hard-hitting. We can't go for broke and tell people the actual facts and the truth because we're going to frighten everybody. So we can't say too much and all this other stupid crap. So when we had the Mad Bill, that came to within a whisker of getting across the line. The vote was I think there was only 2 or 3 votes on the no side that won it. So how serious is it that as the freedom movement, or whatever you want to call it, and politics generally, that we shoot straight and we tell people how serious things are, because if they'd have got that mad bill over the line and they'd been able to shut down information and censor everything and do whatever, how much trouble would we have been in, Gerard?
Well, I mean, probably not much more than we're already in now, in my view. I mean, the government works pretty hard to try and shut you down as it is. I mean, I've just actually, I know Madison's copped it. I've just copped a bloody AEC authorisation issue tonight as well, which is interesting given the time it's taken to get there. I'm sure the AEC's only done it because someone's decided to report me. We are constantly fighting censorship from the government. We saw it throughout COVID. We see it in the ways of you are called, if you disagree with climate change, you're a climate denier. If you disagree with the vaccine rollout, you're an anti-vaxxer. You can't, the level of bullying that goes on for people that dare stand up to the narrative is out of control. So there is a lot of intimidation, which is, another word for censorship that goes on as it is. So we need to, and then on the other hand, there's a lot of propaganda, as I pointed out before, about the cross-media ownership laws. If you get the same message being put out by News Corp, ABC, and Fairfax/9, the three major mainstream media outlets, it is very hard to actually push back against that. And it's going to be, and that's one thing, obviously I've got self-interest. We've got self-interest in the results of this weekend. But it's going to be interesting to see how we go, given that we're really, myself and Madison in particular, have really only got social media followings. So I would have thought the mainstream media would be all over Madison as a Senate candidate. Have you got any offers from mainstream media at all, Madison, for interviews?
None. Especially when they did the SBS highlight of every Aboriginal person Senate or a spot in Parliament. There was nothing on me yet. I have one of the highest, the highest number one social media, 37,000. Not one phone call, not a text or anything.
Yeah. So there you go. You see, and this is the thing. If you dare speak up against the narrative, they can also censor you, but just not talking about you. There was you've really made it to the big time when they don't even try and smear you and ridicule you, because they know, actually they tried that on when we announced the merger with the Catters up here, an alliance with the Catters up here. The Townsville Bulletin referred to me as a renegade senator, and I think it's the biggest trending post they've had in a long time. We got over 4,000 likes, and they just got hammered. And in the end, they had to turn the comments off. So misinformation, disinformation would have been bad. They brought the online safety bill in, which, at face value seems like fair. I can't disagree with some of the ideas of keeping kids off social media and all that stuff. Don't get me wrong. I think that's a good idea. But the reality is you can do that already. And I know that as a parent of, a 13-year-old and a 11-year-old and an 8-year-old, we already have parental controls. I get text messages from my son about 4:30 every afternoon when he's forced off his apps that he likes to play with, so that he goes and does his homework and whatever. But yet again, that enables social media companies to use surveillance techniques as to what we're doing, geographical, geospatial location. They can track you where you're going. I mean, this was all admitted to in the inquiry that we held. So they've enabled social media companies to have an enormous amount of power and surveillance powers over what we do. So they did get that one up, and then they got the hate crimes bill up as well, which of course changed the rules of discrimination and hate crimes from intent to reckless behaviour. So, I could be having a couple of beers with my mates in the pub, dumping shit on one of my mates who might happen to be a bit overweight or whatever. And if another overweight person was to overhear that, that they could possibly, under the hate crimes bill, come after me. But, going from deliberate intent to reckless behaviour, that's a subjective term that's open to interpretation. You're just making it very, you're opening up, avenues for people to use lawfare against free speech when you're dealing in identity politics. And of course, that's the problem. If you want to be able to call out, where identity politics is being used to drive a narrative, you run the risk now of being, arrested or charged under a hate crimes bill, which is mandatory sentencing, by the way, and can apply to anyone of any age including children under 14, which of course is just absurd, given that, children under 14, well, all of us, can sometimes say stupid things. I mean, we're all guilty of that. But, yeah, so, even though they didn't get the disinformation, but they had to hide with that one because they actually exempted media, politicians and universities from that particular bill. So the bill itself was just so arrogant in the fact that it didn't even try to pretend that it was trying to protect the people. It's so blatantly obvious I'm trying to protect the big end of town and their ability to say whatever they liked without any pushback from the individuals themselves. So, so look, it would have been worse, but I'm telling you that this battle isn't finished. It will continue, and they will come back. They'll come back. They'll rename the bill. They'll tweak it a bit here, tweak it a bit there. They'll create an event, or they'll use an event or blow up an event to justify bringing it in, and they'll whip up a whole hysteria in the media, a bit like the COVID palaver and the climate change. Ice caps are going to melt by, in 10 years' time. We've never seen that happen, or the dams will never fill again. They'll use that sort of hysteria to whip people up into a sort of, state of paranoia, and then they'll use that fear to justify bringing in some draconian law. So we're up against it. So it is very important that we get, and I know what you mean, it's Freedom Party sort of a bit overused term, and I'd like to think there's a bit more depth to us than just sort of shouting the slogan freedom. But what's really important, and it's going to be a long, hard grind, but we really need to get a viable third way in the politics. And by third way, I'm talking, one way is Labor Greens, the other way is Lib Nats, and more, One Nation seems to be joining on the establishment bandwagon. So we need a third way that, rather than as the command and control approach of Labor or the born to rule approach of the Liberals, is actually going to have a, born to serve or want to serve and serve the people approach, and where we put the people first, hence the name of the party. And that's what people, I think, are really wanting to see, is that a political party that wants to put its country first, its culture first, its people first, and of course their capital first as well. Because for too long, and I take it, Wade, just listening to you, you're an unashamed protectionist like myself, who can look back and see the damage that was done by those economic rationalist policies of the 1980s, where we opened up Australia. And I'm not against trade. Let's not, trade's good, right? We need trade, but we also need a level playing field. And the idea that we have to import Canadian pork or pork from Denmark because the EU subsidises the crap out of their farmers, that stuff's not on. Australia is probably one of the few countries in the world that doesn't protect its agricultural and manufacturing industries, and that sort of stuff's got to stop. Don't get me wrong, we don't want to see, protectionism to the extent, or we don't want to see where industries are protected to an extent they can't compete in a global markets. But I know many farmers and many small business people who are very entrepreneurial, very innovative. And if we get out of the road, those sort of small to medium businesses can grow into large ones. But when they've got to pay twice the rate of tax that foreign companies do, when they've got rules and regulations from 3 levels of government. I just saw it. Someone sent me a thing this afternoon that the councils are now sending letters to parents of children who aren't vaccinated. This is councils. So we've just got, way too much regulation in this country that's got to go as well. So we've got to reform our tax system and get rid of the red tape, green tape, whatever, and just, let small business, Australian business go. Because I do believe there's enough entrepreneurial spirit out there in this country that, and you'll always have your grifters. We've got our grifters now in the renewable sector and banking sector anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're always going to have grifters no matter what system you're in. You've got to have the guts to call them out and stomp them out to the best of your ability. They're a bit like cockroaches. You'll never quite get rid of them, but, you got to stomp on them when you see them. But it just seems to be this culture now that, for a long time it was always, you'd hear politicians say, oh, but we've always relied on foreign capital. Well, that is crap. The words of our national anthem is wealth for toil. It's not wealth for foreign capital. And, it's the people that, get out there and put their nose to the grindstone, and I don't care whether they're, blue collar Labor, small business Liberal or farmers. or hippies or whoever, if they're getting out of bed and putting their nose to the grindstone, they're the people we want to be protecting.
Oh, look, without any doubt at all. And I mean, to go back a couple of steps there, you talked about, the media, the government and universities will be exempted from these hate speech laws. Well, they're the ones that should be the main targets of it, because, I mean, we all know exactly what they're like. So, and in terms of open free trade and so on, we've been fighting against EEC subsidies for years and years and years. So we needed to have some protection because similarly, Australian farmers have to jump through so many hoops and so much expense just to produce something, so many QA, so much quality assurance, and then they go and import all this crap from overseas that, glows in the dark and is made with rats, you know what I'm saying? So we can't compete against that. But I'd just like to say to Maddie there, the voice was a huge issue. And well done to you for standing up and actually representing the real people, because that was nothing more than a corporate takeover using and exploiting people for that purpose. I know, we were touring at the time, and everything I did was I was saying to people, vote no. Whatever you do, vote no. This is a shocker. It's so terrible. It'll conserve power to a very, very tiny number of people who are working under international directions, to the point where I even got attacked by Channel 7. Now, one and only time Channel 7 have ever wanted to do an interview with Billboard Battalion. They tried to make me paint like a racist and all sort of thing. Well, I mean, and as a white bloke, speaking on Aboriginal issues, well, you can't have that sort of thing, But anyway, well done to you for standing up, and you're really having a go here, and I think that is fantastic, absolutely brilliant, mate.
Yeah, I think it's also misleading too. So there's been sent a couple of clips about parks being shut down. Now, people are very quick to blame Aboriginal people, but there's a whole story behind this, and I know this because I've seen it. I've sat in these meetings, and I've watched. So they've closed down these parks, and they will call it parks and wildlife. So for El Questro or the Gibb River Road, they'll say, this is all protected land. And then they'll say, we've got Aboriginal ranges, we have all of these things in place. But what it is it's big corporations pushing us out at the front and saying, well, you're the face of this, and this is the reason why we're doing it. But really, they're building major hotels in the background, limiting the people's access, including myself, and then saying that we're the ones pushing the agenda, but it's not. I can sell my own bush foods in my area without the permission of the big corporations who actually have leased those lands for 99 years. And this is what most Australians don't know.
And look, I'm so glad to see you saying this, because this is the facts, this is the truth. It's all part of the dirty deals that are going on. This is all part of our four major parties who are selling out our country. They're allowing this, and they're actually helping this. They're giving this the capacity. They're enabling this sort of stuff to happen. And Aboriginal people are losing out exactly the same as all the rest of us.
Yes.
So that's why I'm so glad to see you standing up and saying that. And Gerard's going for broke and doing an amazing job. So this is what we need. And, we desperately need people like, your party, Gerard, all your people, and all the other, what we call freedom parties in power to break that. It's a stranglehold they've got now. We need that to be broken up. And, I'll just give you a second to respond to that, which I think would be a really great response. But I also want to touch, before we finish, on the IHRs and the WHO and getting the hell out of the WHO and all this sort of stuff. So, I'd like to hear what you got to say about what, Madison and I were just talking about. It'd be really great to hear that. And then I sort of want to touch on these IHR stuff, mate.
Okay. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. We saw your screen go back for a second, so you must have got a call coming in. So we might chuck over to Maddie when you're ready to come back, Gerard. Just let us know there, mate. So how are you prepared to head over east if you get this job, Maddie? Are you happy with that?
Yeah, sorry there, Wade. Yeah, I just I should have put my phone on airplane mode. Yeah, so World Health, look, we'll get out of the World Health Organization. I try to say to people, look, the best thing to do is just pull our bureaucrats out of Switzerland. We've got full-time bureaucrats in Switzerland. In terms of international influence, the best thing to do is just cut international travel for bureaucrats altogether, no matter what department they're in. I do take a bit of a different approach to the United Nations as a whole. I think the initial charter or the mandate, the initial charter of the United Nations was actually designed to protect the sovereignty of individual countries and push back on global overreach. And unfortunately, that's been hijacked by the globalists who've taken over the UN. But Australia is an isolated country in the South Pacific. And while I'm happy to get out of the World Health Organization, I think we should stay in the United Nations and try and influence other countries at the table and vigorously debate in order to protect the independence of smaller countries, including Australia, so that we aren't actually influenced by these big monolith corporations. So that's probably where we differ as a party to some of the other minor parties that just want to get out of everything. We do think we do need to collaborate on some things. You can't make decisions out in the car park. You've got to be in the boardroom, and that's where we want to be. So by all means, we don't need to have a centralised health bureaucracy from Switzerland telling us how to make our health choices. We've got very good doctors here and other medical health professionals, medical experts, health professionals, health practitioners who have a lot of experience, and it's all about the patient-doctor relationship. So yes, we would get out of the World Health Organization, but I look, as someone who spent 7 years traveling around the world, went to 85 countries. I'm very much of the opinion there's one race, the human race. I love traveling the world, and I want to get the world back to where it was when I traveled around there in the 1990s, before September the 11th, before those terrible wars in the Middle East, and before as I said in my maiden speech, the 21st century in regards to foreign affairs has been dominated by belligerent rhetoric and an unwillingness to seek peace. I want to seek peace. I want to build strong relationships with all other countries. I want these wars that are basically wars that protect rich people and big corporations to stop. And I think Australia, we had a very strong reputation once as being a country that was well respected, and I want that reputation to stay. And I want Australia to be a player on the world stage, because we are an island, but we're also part of a bigger globe. And I think our values are very important, and we want to project our Australian, lucky, what do you call it, easygoing values onto the United Nations. And look, can I tell you, I've spent hours in bus stops and travelled and had the hospitality of many people in many third world countries. And let me tell you, we share a common bond, and that is we all hate our governments, right? And the governments are dictated by, are dominated by yes men. So we do slightly vary on there. We don't need a World Health Organization telling us how to make our health choices. But I would like to think that we could help influence the United Nations to go back and stick to its original charter, which was to protect countries and the sovereignty of countries against the globalisation. It's sort of the role of the UN, or what it's been used for, is it's been a bit like the White House was hijacked under Biden by the globalists. Well, we want to get the United Nations back to be a grassroots movement, where the movement is actually dominated by independent countries who are basically advocating for policies that will protect their independence and sovereignty in a peaceful manner, without resorting to war, whereby big countries are being influenced by big corporations. And I saw a good meme the other day. Wars are fought by people, by machines that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, where they're killing people who earn less than $10 a day. And that's the stuff we want to push back against. And I personally think the best avenue to do that is the United Nations. And I think Australia should keep a seat at the table there and project its values and its beliefs and its influence. You know, we're only a middle power, but I think that our record of living in a prosperous country and what until recently seemed like a very tolerant and free country, we need to be pushing those values onto other countries as well.
No, that's. I mean, I think it's very important that the World Health Organization, that people understand what that's actually about. In my opinion, and that's a very, very well educated opinion, is that the World Health Organization is not about looking after your health at all. They do not want people to be healthy. If they get the IHR stuff across the line, which a lot of these filthy people in Canberra have signed up to, then we're in big trouble, because all the stuff that we talk about, whether it's economics, food production, health, jobs, your ability to visit remote and wilderness areas, they will take control of every part of that, and they are in the business of shutting that down. So I think that as the United Nations, or there's certainly a place to be at the table, because, as they say, the people in the room will make the decisions. So we certainly need to have a position there, but we need the Australian representatives to stand up for our country and for our people. So, I think we definitely need to make the very clear distinction about the role of the WHO. I have some very serious, the WHO, I believe they should go and round the whole lot of them up and stick them in jail for the rest of their life. Switzerland has become nothing more than just a haven for criminals. But at the end of the day, we need our politicians to stick up for us. Our agricultural sector's in big trouble. Our manufacturing sector's in big trouble. Even our union, our union sector is in big trouble. We're copping it left, right, and centre. And I'm just so happy to see people like you, Gerard, who you've created this party. You're going for broke. You got Madison there. You got Jody as well. So, and I think one of the things that really impresses me so much is to see that, we'll be talking to Craig Kelly very soon. We'll be talking to other people very soon. And we have spoken to other candidates. And the desire for a lot of the freedom parties and politicians or candidates to work together. I think this is incredibly encouraging. I think it's brilliant. We haven't seen this happen in the past. So, a terrific well done to you and all the rest of them. Like we interviewed Michael O'Neill the other day and his wife Barbara, and different candidates and so on. So I think it's fantastic to see the parties are now recognising the critical importance of working together. So, you might tell us a little bit just quickly of how that happened, how it came about, and what's created the change, what's created the desire now for these people to work as a unit, which I think is just magnificent. I love it.
Look, it just comes down to the individuals. I've been very lucky to have the Catters. I've always had a good relationship with the Catters. They've always been protectionists. Bob Catter was one of the few politicians in the 90s and early 2000s to push back against the globalism that swept through Australia. And we got away with it for the first couple of decades because of the, it's like if you go and borrow $100,000 and go on a holiday, the first year is good when you're blowing hundreds grand. It's when you wake up, after the hangover or whatever, thinking, well, I've got $100,000 debt, nothing to show for it. And that's where unfortunately our younger children are facing. They're the ones incurring this debt. I've got a very good relationship with Robbie Catter, so we've got a alliance up here with them. I've got a very good relationship with Michael O'Neill from the Heart Party. He's a very, very good man. He was willing to put the Heart Party behind other parties. I've got a friendship with Craig Kelly, stemming back to when we were both Liberal renegades in the Liberal Party. He took a stand, so I got on well with Craig there. So that's how we managed to form those alliances. And it comes down to the willingness of the personalities who are running these parties to work with other parties. And, you know, hats off to the Katters, the Libertarians and the Heart Party for, you know, being prepared to negotiate. And I should also acknowledge the Family First. I got on very well with them. We've got a preference deal going in South Australia as well, and the Gap Party with Rod Cullen in WA. And, yeah, look, eventually, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day. And as I've said to a few people who, you know, still aren't happy with it, look, don't let perfection be the enemy of progress. And hopefully if we can just keep inching forward, we can sort of find some common ground over a period of time where we can maybe merge into the future, or at least, you know, consolidate some parties so there's less minor parties.
Well, look, I love all that. It's great. We interviewed Chris Neal just recently. Chris is a top bloke. I've known him for a while now. I think you've got a great candidate in Chris as well. You know, and I think that this is a terrific place to finish on, is talking about the unity and the solidarity between a lot of the freedom parties and a lot of the smaller parties. You know, I think it's a great place to finish, and it gives you a little bit of hope. You know what I mean? That things can be sorted out, and we can get some good people in Canberra to assist, you know, the likes of what you yourself are doing. Maddie, is there anything that you might want to say just to close with? We're almost up to our hour now, so from here on in, it's up to you two to work out how long you want to go for, because I can talk for 10 or a dozen hours. It's a couple of days solid, really. So, you know, is there anything else you want to chuck in there, mate?
Well, like for me, I think we need to just focus solely on Australia. We need to keep our taxes here. And clearly, if we're sending millions and billions of dollars overseas to other countries, plus $1.5 billion for a war that we should never be a part of, then we are clearly being overtaxed in this country. We need to look at our own home, our infrastructure, getting small and rural towns back in the limelight. If those towns and those communities aren't built for families, then how are we supposed to get people out of the city and out into the country? Because we certainly can't expect people from the country to adjust to the city. It just doesn't work like that. So for my belief, we need to focus solely on Australia. We have to stop looking overseas and sending our money over there to help other people. You need to look after your backyard. It's that simple.
Yep.
And we can't just throw down the cattle and the sheep industry when it brings in $83 billion per year for those small rural towns. It's crazy to shut it down or even think along that line. So that's me over it.
And that's,
Well done.
Yeah.
And I'll just say thanks very much. I know you've got a little bit of a thing going on there. So thank you so much for putting that time in, Madison, and you know, giving us that, mate. I know that's we're really happy with that. Thank you so much. Now, Gerard.
Yeah, no, I
Just
look,
to close,
can I
mate?
just endorse Madison's comments there? That you know, that's exactly right. We've got to put Australia first and the people first, and we need to focus on coming back to those international bodies you were talking about. And I'll say this a lot: we need to focus on our own bureaucracy, because if we got our own bureaucracy and got them focused on putting Australia first, a lot of these international bodies wouldn't have the influence they had. So we really need to look at our own backyard and what's going on in Canberra, rather than shouting at the clouds about foreign institutions, because if you get the right people in the right places who are going to put Australia first, they'll become irrelevant anyway. But can I just acknowledge Madison as well for running? She's doing a fantastic effort, and I think she's got a big future ahead of her. So thanks, Madison, for running. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for bringing me
Absolutely.
on. I'm really,
you're welcome.
I'm always stoked about coming on your team.
No. It's my pleasure, I can assure you. And I know a lot of so many of our supporters are stoked as well that you're on the team. So we're really stoked to have you on. And thanks for fighting and making those sacrifices I know you're making.
Thank you.
Well,
thanks, mate, for having me.
Well, you're more than welcome anytime, mate. Just give us a yell, and we'll light things up and go for it. That's not a problem. I'm pretty sure we'll certainly have things to talk about in the very near future, because we've got a lot going on with what we're doing, and this is like we're flat out into it as hard as we can go. And like I say, we'll never go weak at the knees, mate. We'll fight every step of the way. So thanks very much to you and your terrific team, Gerard. Thanks very much for giving us the time tonight. It's just gone 8 o'clock here, Victorian time, 8 p.m. So we might pull a pin at that, and hopefully we'll get to have a chat with you again in the winner's circle.
Yeah, cheers. Okay. Thanks,
Good.
Wade.
Thank
Thanks, Madison. Have a good night.
you.
Okay, bye, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Good night, guys.